Hello and welcome to WJTS Inform. It's time for our weekly visit from Mark Messmer, State Representative for District 63, as legislation in the short session is going on right now in the State House, but Mark makes his way back and stops by the studio to kind of keep us up to date on bills that have passed. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here again.
Well, we are glad to have you here. Now, I know all the attention, for the most part, from the media has been about the same-sex amendment to the Constitution bill that's gone. Now, so the House made an adjustment to the bill
yes.
and then passed it on.
Correct.
If you could, we talk a little bit about that, and we'll move
Sure.
on to other bills.
On Monday, we had amending of HJR 3, and there was two parts of it. The first was definition is between a man and a woman, and the second sentence said, you know, we're not going to allow adoption of anything similar to marriage, which we could have said we're going to ban civil unions, but they could just change the word. And so there was some uneasiness with some of our members of having that in. And so Monday we had a vote on the floor to repeal that part of it, and it passed, I think, 53 to 40, I think was the, or 53, might have been 45. It was pretty close split, 53-45, I think. There was two members not there. So that part of the definition got removed, and it's now just a marriages between a man and a woman. Came back Tuesday for final passage, and it passed 57 to 40, and is off to the Senate.
Now it's at the Senate. They will vote. How do you think it'll go at the Senate?
My projection, it'll be unchanged and be voted, you know, with a positive vote.
Okay.
I would not expect them to add the second sentence back in. Just because they've seen what turmoil it's been on the House. And really the definition of marriage accomplishes what the legislature, you know, feels we need to do. And seeing what's happened in other states, there's 29 states that have prohibitions on gay marriage, and 20 of those have a definition that says marriages between a man and a woman and no civil unions or no equivalent to marriage. 9 of them just have the definition, and then there's 4 states like us that have it in statute but don't have it addressed in their constitution. If we don't put the definition in the Constitution, there really wouldn't be anything from prohibiting, you know, somebody to challenge our marriage definition and require it to be between a man and a woman, and challenge it in court. A county court judge could say, you know, I agree with you. I think this is discriminatory, and declare it unconstitutional. It would then go to an appeals court. Could go to the Supreme Court, and they could toss our statute. You know, but if it's in the Constitution, somebody could file. A judge could say, you know, this is our current law. It's in the Constitution, that's, you know, backed up by the Constitution, and a state court judge at any level would not have the authority to toss our current law. It doesn't prevent us, you know, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. At some point down the road, if the overwhelming majority of the population says, you know, we really think we want to change this, we just reverse what we've done to put it in the Constitution, take it out, and then repeal, you know, either repeal the ban or change, you know. I mean, just it's easy to change it down the road if the overwhelming majority of the Hoosiers want it changed.
Okay, and really, it's passed out of the House. We'll go to the Senate. Senate passes it. That doesn't mean it's law because we're changing the Constitution. So then folks, the regular citizens, will make the vote, yay or nay.
Adopt it, yay or nay.
Okay.
But we'll have to pass it again next year in the General Assembly. We have to wait till there's an election, have a separately elected General Assembly, come back and adopt it again, and then it could be on the ballot in either 2015 or 2016.
Okay. Now, let's go on and move on to some other bills that probably didn't get as much attention but are important that came out of the House.
Well, this week we passed 100, you'd think we only passed one piece. We did pass 118 bills this week that we sent on to the Senate, and people say, gosh, it's such a, you know, such a partisan atmosphere up there. I went back and counted it, and as we've been doing votes, and I keep my little tally sheet off our House calendar every day, out of those 118 bills, 2 were party line votes. There was several that had maybe 60 to 40 or 65 to 30. I mean, there were several that had split votes, but they were Democrats and Republicans voting for and against. I mean, there were several that were, some were very close, but 2 bills out of 118 were straight party line votes. Probably had more to do with who the author of the bill was than the content of the bill. Sometimes, sometimes there's lightning rod personalities, that tend to attract that type of response, from other members of the General Assembly. But so it is really, and I think of the first 30 or so bills we had passed, 20 were unanimous. All were bipartisan. I would expect out of that 118, 70 to 80 of them were probably unanimous. I mean, a very large percentage.
Well, probably a lot of people associate what happens nationally with what happens on the state level.
And
it's not the case.
It's really not that
the
way.
case.
No,
Okay.
not at all. My 4 bills, I had one receive final passage this week. The Office of Small Business and Entrepreneurship was passed by a 94-0 vote on Wednesday and goes over to the Senate. Senator Yoder is going to be the sponsor of the bill on the Senate side. Sets up the Office of Entrepreneurship and Small Business under the Lieutenant Governor's office. Allows her to pick all of the various programs we've passed over the past few years with higher ed, with stuff that's under OKRA, things that were in IEDC, pulls them all into one department so things can be done more effectively and efficiently and serve small businesses, with a quicker response. So. A good piece of legislation. Glad that one moved through. And my other 3 bills received final amendment work this week and will be on the calendar for Monday for final approval. So, and I think they'll all pass. The one that was the toughest to drag through was the farm wineries bill. Up until 2006, farm wineries could sell to whoever they wanted, unrestricted. There was a Supreme Court case that caused some concern from our wholesalers. They decided to stop their self-distribution rights totally, not to the approval of the farm wineries, but they didn't have anybody fighting for them then. So this year what we're going to do is give them ability to sell 5,000 gallons to retailers or restaurants in their county or a contiguous county.
Okay.
And then, then above that, anything else would be either to regular wholesale channels or through their, at their winery. That received the final amending on Thursday, and it'll be up for final passage Monday. So things are all moving along well on my bills in the House.
And next week we'll be talking about those, find
Yep.
out how well they did.
Hopefully.
They all probably all go through.
They should pass, yeah.
Okay.
We've passed the farm winery bill without the geographic limit, I think 3 or 4 years in a row in the House, but the Senate's been not too friendly. So, but the wholesalers and the wineries all agree to how we've got the bill drafted this year. So, we've got some kumbaya moments going on that. So,
all right. Let's see what happens in the Senate.
That's right. Other bills of note, House Bill 1001 was the business personal property tax phase out. Started out from the governor's proposal was to eliminate it totally. Really too big of a price tag, across the state. It's strictly a local funding issue. They've pulled out the total for business personal property statewide is $1 billion. They took out utility companies from the mix, which dropped about $300 million out of the business personal property that utility companies pay, because that utility company isn't going to pick up and move, whether they and that's part of their current rate structure recapture. So really was not important at all to include them. And then they're going to take it and be just on new property. It won't touch any existing property, and then that knocks it down about another 90%. So we're dealing with a pretty small number, and it's going to be decided at the local level whether they want to adopt it or not. And really, a county is going to have to look, at their particular dependence on that. And really, the overall dependence on that with those changes gets down from a fraction of a percent to maybe 5% was of the total taxation. The worst county in the state was less than 5% of their total revenue. With the bill as it stands was business personal property, new equipment. So it gets anywhere from, I think it was anywhere from just a little under 5 to 0.2.
So it's kind of not so effective.
It will be over time. Over time it'll have the effect of slowly over a 20-year period. If you continue to have no new property, the property that's on the books today, will eventually. I think it has a 30% floor for, so eventually it'll wind down the dependence on that, and it'll really incentivize new companies that are here, or new companies want to come here, or companies that are here now that want to grow. They won't have to be dependent upon, whether they're going to get an abatement for it. I mean, if it's a new equipment upgrade, they'll be able to add, put in new equipment and not, not have the business personal property on that. So it's a growth incentive.
Okay.
Then the House Bill 1042, one that I had, there was a much broader bill last year, covered red lights and covered traffic zones, but basically they've got a bill that if you run a school bus arm, that's a pretty dangerous situation for kids.
Oh, yeah.
It's a bill that will allow a school corporation to work with a equipment company to put a video camera that'll start from when the yellow lights go on till the bus comes to a stop, till the stop arm goes out, until the stop arm goes back. It'll have video footage from both directions. So if a car runs past the stop arm, it'll be a video, not just a snapshot. They'll be able to send that record to the police to then process them for, and it has to get the windshield so you see who's actually driving the vehicle, so in case you loaned your vehicle to somebody. Mm-hmm. So and if you say, well, it wasn't me, you'll have the time, the date, and they'll get the license plate, they'll get the person driving it. So if it wasn't you, there's some appeal processes in place to let you say, well, it is my car, but it wasn't me, and it was this guy, and so you have a little bit of recourse if it was somebody else using your vehicle.
Okay. But that's good for safety for school buses.
Oh, absolutely,
sure.
Absolutely. Okay. One that really caught our attention this summer, House Bill 1384, deals with the state police can currently set up they've got hardware that makes your cell phone think it's passing by a cell tower, can pick up your cell phone and capture all the data on that, your phone records, your phone call if you're on it, all of your contact information, and captures all of that data to the state police, kind of like an NSA mini.
Okay. Right here in Indiana.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that passed by an 87-3 margin. It will require, before they can capture any cell data, they've got to have a warrant or they've got to have probable cause. Just like if they were entering your property, if they're in a hot pursuit of a crime, situations change a little bit on what law enforcement's able to do, or if they have a warrant for, if they think you're a suspect in a crime, they can get a search warrant. But without that, this bill would stop them from just grabbing everybody's cell data. That's a pretty heavy infringement on our personal space. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yet it still allows the police to be able to do it because they'll get a warrant or probable cause.
Yep,
yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Another bill of high interest is under welfare reform. Folks who receive TANF, which is the cash benefit, part of welfare. It'll be a drug testing program similar to that we passed the last 2 years, require a random pool of those folks. And then also we added to the drug testing provisions of that was people who receive food stamps, we're gonna require that the food that they purchase with the food stamps has nutritional value. Eliminate the ability to buy chips and Twinkies and soft drinks. If they're going to use food stamps for it, it's going to be actually food that's good for you. And with that, we're going to have a study of the chronic long-term unemployed, have the Department of Workforce Development that handles unemployment issues do a study as to why we have a chronic pool of unemployed and report back to the legislature.
Okay. So. And those have all passed out of the House, now going to the Senate?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sure there's some bills that come then from the Senate
to
the House, and we'll discuss those in another time.
Very good.
Well, Mark, thank you very much for coming in. Our guest has been Mark Messmer. He is State Representative District 63 in the Indiana House, and we thank you for watching WJTS Inform. We certainly appreciate him taking the time to talk with us on this Friday. We hope you keep watching. We are local people watching local people WJTS.